Okay, hello everyone. Hello, good afternoon. So for my capstone project, I decided that I want to do a concept art. The thing here is that I decided that I want to do a concept art because at least in the future I want to be a concept artist, and I figured out maybe I could use this as my capstone project, and well, it did sort of work. I did enjoy some of the previous months doing these things, and before I proceed to the rest of it, I would like you to introduce you to my inquiry question, which is what is concept art? Well, we can think of concept art as a type of visual art that is often used to describe what a character, object, creature, monster would look like before its final product. And ideally, we could think of concept art as a prototype design, and the final product would be what we call illustration. And so on the next slide, I have some comparison that I can show to you guys. And here we have on my left side is a concept art, and right side is an illustration. And so to summarize that to everything, the purpose of concept art is to just convey ideas and thoughts. And illustration is the final product, and mostly it conveys feelings, emotions, and how you view the image. And so most of the time the video games you play have a illustration, like the wallpapers, loading screens and such. And most of the time concept arts are pretty much hidden. They're just like the rough draft of your essay. It doesn't exist. And so on the next slide, I'll show you some examples of a one of my favorite artists. And so you can think of it if this is a illustration or a concept art. Well, pretty much this is actually a environment concept art, and it was made by my favorite artist. And this is where my projects are actually made from environment concept arts. And here's a one thing I made. I made this on January 31 on New Year's Eve. And the method I did here is pretty much very simple. And that method is sort of photo bashing. And what is photo bashing? Well, we can think of photo bashing as a type of technique used by concept artists to speed up the workflow. And so by doing this, they gather different images all together and make a collage. And the next step of collage is pretty much overpainting. So what I meant is that you overpaint the images, and you would end up with a new different image. Sort of look like it's a painting. And so on the next slide, I'll share some examples of my main procedures and how I do them. Oops. And so on my next slide, I'll show you my five steps on how I do them. So first, I start with a base image. And well, the purpose of base image is to just give myself enough time to figure out whether what my concept art would look like. So pretty much this is the main step, gathering different images all together and sort of creating a final look on my concept art. And so once I figure out my base image, I will then now start working on my background. And well, the purpose of background is to just add some highlights there and there, add just to make it look very environment. So by adding highlights in here, so by adding highlights here, and there, Also here as well, and I added some designs like cable in there, if you can see it, and some sci-fi city. And so once I figure out my background, I will now add my base image from my previous slide. And the purpose of this is to just figure out my perspective. And so by using perspective tool, I will fix some of the images if one looks like slightly tilted, slightly slant. That's pretty much so they can blend in the background. And once I figure out my perspectives, I will now then start to photo brush. I know that's sort of, you can see the difference, right? I mean, you can stop here if you want, but if you feel like you want to add some highlights or highlights on the artwork, then you can end up with this. And I know that's not enough to explain things, so I'll show you some of my demos and highlights on how I overpaint them, so you can see the behind the scenes of how I do it. And that's the final product. So what you can see here is just me basically adding images different and overpainting them, which is the same pattern you would see for the rest of the video. Now that you see most of how I do it, I will now then try to shut up and you can just enjoy the rest of the show. Alright. So now that you saw some of how I do it, I will now show you some of my progression. And so on the next slide, I'll show you of my one of the things I did on October until January. Okay, so now that you saw everything, now I feel like exposed. So with everything I did, I of course met some obstacles and challenges during this capstone project. And let's say in the first month of my capstone project, I was sort of struggling. The thing here is that I lack the fundamentals, and lacking fundamentals, I feel like I cannot put my ideas into the canvas, and because of that, I feel like frustrated or terrible. And the only way to break the thing pretty much is to just practice, and keep on moving forward. Whatever happens, happens. And the next thing that I also have faced on is fatigue. Well, pretty much this can be broken into pieces, but if we think of the whole fatigue in general, probably it's just not me taking a break. And I feel like if I didn't take a break, I would sort of feel like my artwork would degrade as much as hours I've spent sitting on a my computer. And the thing here is that if I don't take a break, I feel like wasting time, and that's the habit I have to fix on the first month of doing this. So if I took a break, then I feel like my creativeness would just come back. And pretty much the thing that I've also faced on is burnout. The thing with burnout is on the first month doing this Captain project, I feel like I'm not progressing. And if I'm not progressing, I feel like I'm not rewarded to that. And I was tempted to change my capstone project, and but the thing is, because of the fundamentals and my mindset of thinking like whatever happens, I just proceeded on doing my capstone project, and pretty much I did manage. I'm here presenting. But with every obstacles and challenges, I've also learned something or gained from it. And pretty much I realized that most of my favorite artists have spent like hours upon hours trying to be good at something. And because of that, I start to feel like appreciate them more than ever, because you don't know when are they going to quit doing art. And so with the time not given, I would just pretty much appreciate the art, maybe share it to you guys, or that's pretty much I just can't explain it, but just start to appreciate some of the artists more and more. And because of those things that I've said, like the efforts and gains that I get from this capstone project, I think those are some of the reasons why I decided to choose this as my capstone project.